I just don't believe until, something happens with his health that doesn't allow it, that he'll be able to step away. And we're even seeing still, Joe Biden is still having input, right? Sometimes, if I could say a little generational politics, these baby boomers just can't seem to know when it's their time to gracefully exit.
Every single day, Donald Trump makes news. And if it's not words coming direct from the president's mouth, then it is usually because of statements coming from his White House spokesperson, the uber-loyal Caroline Frederickson-Leavitt, as was, who has been his shield and advocate through his second term. Well, now Caroline is leaving, apparently, to spend more time with her young family. And that in itself is news that's caused an enormous stir in Washington. Donald Trump's approval ratings have sunk to unprecedented lows. Cracks are widening within the American conservative movement, not least over the Iran war. So has defending him become an impossible job? Well, let's speak to Amy Frederickson. She is a former Republican leader in the Minnesota Senate and political strategist. I should just say that Caroline Leavitt is not now Frederickson. It's Amy who is now Frederickson.
Not everyone. No, not everyone.
So there was a screw up on my part. But Amy Frederickson, welcome to the Times at 1. Let me ask you about this Caroline Leavitt resignation. Is there more to it than her wanting to spend more time with her family, do you think?
Yeah, so I think your intro is spot on, because I actually don't think there's more to it than that. She is the youngest press secretary in U.S. history. She's only 28 now, and she's been doing this job for a couple years. She has a very young family, a new baby in May. And so and she ran for Congress in 2022. I don't think there's much to it. I think she's leaving the White House with a brighter political future than even coming in. I think in a rare fashion, she was part of the Trump administration that added to her resume rather than detracted. So I don't think there's more to that. But what is very important to this is the impact on the Trump administration overall, 3 months out from a really important election, with the approval rating just, at its all-time low for this president.
Is there a sense that Donald Trump is losing his grip?
Well, we just had an election 2 days ago here in Minnesota, and for a Minnesota governor and for a U.S. Senate race. We had a primary. The Republicans in the primaries have been overwhelmingly, Trump has been running the board on his wins for endorsed members. So if he endorsed someone in any race, about 95 to 96% of these primaries, he has been winning. But as they have gone on, and we have a very late primary in Minnesota, we had an Donald Trump endorsed candidate on the ballot for governor who came in and lost by double digits to the non-endorsed candidate just 2 days ago. And there was a real feeling in Minnesota that something had happened around that endorsement. In fact, that his candidate was leading about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and in the polls, and lost handily just 4 weeks later. I think that there just does feel, given gas prices, inflation, what's happening with the Iran war, how long it's gone on, sort of really sensing like there's no control there, and no one's being held accountable for this dragged on conflict. I do really feel like there's some kind of a shift. And, if November happens like I believe November will happen, which will be a tough year or tough election for Republicans, I think that only exacerbates the problem for this president.
Yeah, I think I'm right in saying that you in recent times have not been though you're Republican, you've not been a huge fan of Donald Trump, but it is now clear that some of those who in the past have been his loudest supporters, most important supporters in the American conservative movement, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Tucker Carlson, they have broken with him. They are now deeply and loudly critical of him. And I just wonder why you think these cracks inside the conservative movement are widening and how much damage it's doing.
Well, I do consider myself very much a conservative in all aspects. I don't consider Donald Trump particularly conservative in what he does. I feel like he's conservative on one thing, and that's what's benefiting to this president. I also will compliment the president when I think he does well. I think Venezuela was a well-run operation and served its purpose. But I will be critical. And I do think what you're seeing is just, and again, it is the cracks. Again, this primary season, he still very much ran the table on most of his endorsed candidates. But there is this sense of we're going into the midterms. We have that he's been the sun in which the Republican Party rotates, and when his star rises, he gets support. And that's not what's happening here. His approval rating is low. And so,
Right.
Some of these loyal supporters and others that just have become disillusioned. And by the way, I do not believe for a second that's the case with Caroline Leavitt. I really think she is just moving on from a tough job that really nobody wants.
Caroline Leavitt, in her job as spokesperson, she obviously always resisted any suggestion that Donald Trump's mental and physical health might be deteriorating. Republicans pounded the Democrats for not being honest about Joe Biden's deterioration. We see Donald Trump now. We see the way his speeches ramble. We see the way he falls asleep when others are making speeches very close to him. We see the manic episodes of posting bizarre stuff on Truth Social in the middle of the night. Are Republicans in denial about the decline, the physical and mental decline of Donald Trump?
Well, in some ways, I feel like some of the stuff he does, like the 3 a.m. post, is pretty classic Trump. But I do think, and this is, the debate that was had when Joe Biden was elected and now on Donald Trump, when you're electing someone, well advanced in age into their 80s, that's just not a usual position where the stressful job of the most powerful man in the world or woman in the world should be held for someone with advanced age. And I think you see it. It ages young presidents. It aged Barack Obama and George W. Bush. And what it does to someone in their 80s. You can see the digression. You can see it with Joe Biden, and I think you see it with Donald Trump. And I just think people have to acknowledge that.
Right.
Oh, go ahead.
So as a loyal Republican who I imagine wants to see your party win the next presidential election, how damaging is it, do you think, that when it comes to the succession, it's a topic that Donald Trump tries to evade? We see him playing off J.D. Vance against Marco Rubio. We see him raising the prospect now and again, maybe joking, maybe not, of trying to run for an unconstitutional third term. It seems Donald Trump cannot face the prospect of not being center stage, and that could really damage your party, couldn't it?
Well, it could, because in the end, of course, he's not going to run for a third term. But will he sort of hang around like a specter and sort of weigh in and have input and effect that is damaging instead of just letting Republicans choose the next person?
He won't do that. He will not let go of that power that he believes he has.
No, he wants to just continue to have some thrill in, being in the headlines, having impact with his statements. I agree. I just don't believe until, something happens with his health that doesn't allow it, that he'll be able to step away. And we're even seeing still, Joe Biden is still having input, right? Sometimes, if I could say a little generational politics, these baby boomers just can't seem to know when it's their time to gracefully exit.
Mm-hmm. Well, Amy Frederickson, and you really are a Frederickson, former state Senate Majority Leader and current Republican political strategist, thanks so much for joining me on The Times at 1. Thanks a lot.